Everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. As an aspiring psychologist, I want to learn all about human nature and why we do the things that we do. For instance, around the holidays every year, people will sit down and make a long list of resolutions that they want to keep up for the new year. Part of this is breaking a lot of bad habits. Habits are incredibly powerful, and by understanding how they work, we can use their power to improve our lives for as long as we want to keep up the habits. My purpose of this entire speech is for more people to understand what habits are, why they matter, and how we can manipulate them into becoming tools for bettering our own success. So firstly, we're going to discuss what habits are and why they matter. Second, how habits are even formed. And then lastly, how to change and then build new habits or alter them. So, firstly, what are habits and why do they matter? The Oxford definition of a habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. This analogy can kind of be looked at like addiction. Many people are addicted to things like nicotine. Well, in a sense, from a mental perspective, habits are kind of like the same thing because your mind almost relies on doing these things so frequently. So, how much of a role do habits play in our daily lives? Well, according to the Arnold School of Public Health, 66% of our daily lives are driven by pure habit. In a time sense, that means that out of the 24-hour day that we have, 16 hours are strictly done by habit and what we do every day. Now, of course, there are many good and many bad habits. Good habits would be doing things like making sure you're drinking enough water every day, or taking time out of your day to go take a walk for a mental cleanser. Bad habits would be like chewing on your fingernails, or maybe eating too much sugar. Simple things like that, but our body becomes super accustomed to them, and it becomes very hard for it to break up. So, now that we kind of have a general sense of what we're dealing with, we can move on to how habits are formed. So habits can be classified with around three general stages. Cue, which is what kind of kicks off the habit each time that you perform it. The actual routine, which is the habit or whatever you do itself. And then also, finally, the reward, which is essentially what you get from the habit and why you do it every single day. So, an example of this would be like checking your phone when you get a notification. Let's say you get a text message, and after you get done checking it, you end up going to TikTok and scrolling for the next 15 to 20 minutes instead of doing anything productive. It's a vicious cycle that many people our age are very accustomed to because it's so easy to get lost in that rabbit hole of content and dopamine. So, how really do habits kind of make way in our minds? Well, research indicates that habits are formed from context clues. Now, the National Library of Medicine says that when the habit loop is formed, our brains require much less power to actually do the habit, which is why it is very easy to fall back on old habits because you just continuously get stuck in the cycle and it just becomes comfortable, it becomes safe, and it becomes easy. There are other kinds of habits that form, which are more naturally forming. That include things like lifestyle changes. For instance, let's say you walk to work every day, and one day you sporadically decide to go to a coffee shop, and you find that they have really good coffee. So then it just becomes a part of your daily routine, and you make a habit out of going there for coffee before work every morning. That's how simple habits can be when they form. So, now that we kind of understand what it means to form habits and how subconsciously and consciously they can be formed, we need to discuss how to break bad habits or alter them to make them a little bit better. The first step to that is awareness. It is important when you're trying to change a habit to consider what the cue for the habit is and then what the reward is because it makes it a lot easier to simplify in your brain to know what you need to do to accomplish your goal. So, because of this, it does simplify the entire ordeal, but that's also why it's so easy to fall back on your old routines and old habits, because it's very hard to cross that bridge. One of the best strategies out there that a lot of psychologists will talk about is replacing or altering your habits in minute increments that will slowly, over time, help bridge the gap a little bit more seamlessly. The ADHD newsstand has some great general steps for doing this, which include being specific to avoid decision making, because that type of confusion makes it very easy to give up and go back to those old habits. Another thing would be like keeping track in a journal. You can see your progress in real time as you progress towards your goal. And then finally, the best method, in my opinion, for changing your habits is altering your environment. So altering your environment would include things like, maybe you want to improve your diet. Meal prepping is one of the best things you can do. While it does require a lot of upfront work, it makes every day that you work long or you're hanging out with your friends all day and you don't have time to eat much simpler to eat because it's already prepared. And then another thing would be like picking a set time to go and exercise throughout your day. Having a routine and structure helps a lot of people when it comes to making new habits, because it feels almost non-negotiable, such as like going to work. Like, it just becomes part of your routine and it helps really solidify its place. So, doing these things won't guarantee success, but it will help you out a lot. The point of this speech was to help understand that habits are very powerful and very prominent driving factors in our everyday life, and it's very important that we know how to manipulate them to improve our success. We learned that habits are strong, powerful deciders of our everyday life, and we need to learn how to manage. We know how habits are formed and how we can add on to that by building new, better habits, but we also know a lot more about how we can alter habits and make them much easier for us to deal with. Humans are creatures that rely on our habits and our simpler natures, and it is a great test to our mental ability to be able to break things that become so comfortable and easy, and it just goes to show how strong we really are. That's it.